Welcome to Infinity Rewatch. You know who I am, probably. If you don't, my name is right there on the screen. It's Andrew Fantasia. If you're not watching this on a screen, if you're listening to it, then I just spoiled what my name was. I'm sorry. Spoilers ahead.
What's up, everybody? And I'm here, Mr. Ryan J. Marvel. That's what you're going to call me because that's what we're talking about. What's up?
You changed your name.
Actually, that's kind of like the fun of my name because as you guys know, we always introduce my full name. And even when I met Fantasia in our college days, I would introduce myself by my full name. But the fun part I learned about it was you could just swap it out for anything. I could be Ryan J. Windows one day, Ryan J. Xbox, Ryan J. Marvel. So today I'm Ryan J. Marvel, and very excited. This is exciting times because, and I hate saying I'm very excited because I'm always excited, but this is the best time for me as a Marvel fan because we got through Eternals. Eternals was good. Chloe, I think you did a great job, but now it's heavy hitting season. Just before we get into the main topic that I will say is sponsored by our boy Jonathan here because he wanted this episode to happen.
That's right, Jonathan Davis. Thank you, Jonathan, for asking us to do this because it was a great idea, and it's definitely something that needed to happen.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, but a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First of all, we are entering some epic Marvel content. We got Moon Knight coming out at the end of the month, so Fantasia and I will be getting back together on a weekly, watching that Moon Knight action. I am so excited for you, Fantasia. You don't even know what Moon Knight's about. You're going in with nothing. So I'm excited for you. I hope we can get on in a couple episodes because I think this is going to be the first Marvel project that like Guardians, like nobody knows about. So
right.
Nobody knows about this character. So it's either going to be like a big hit or like the Eternals, it could be just this awkward, miss in terms of understanding what it's all about. And so that's going to be an interesting thing there. The second housekeeping item is that Doctor Strange trailer dropped for the multiverse of madness. Oh my God. It broke the internet. And people are still dissecting everything. And I do believe at this point, Marvel fans, that Marvel's teasing us a bit. Marvel is, in fact, teasing us. They will legit throw a match at gasoline because they're like, people are like, oh my God, did you see this in the trailer? Did you see this? And even me, like I could have swore I think I see Human Torch, but it's not Human Torch. But Marvel is just like, have you seen all the little hints in the shattered glass there? So they're kind of putting us on this wild goose chase, trying to sniff out the Feige radar and everything. It's a mad craziness. But Professor X dropping in the trailer. Oh my God. And you threw in that little cheeky viewer comment there, but that's a no. It is. I'm pretty sure it is Professor X. Even Sir Pats himself was like people are saying that, or people have been trying to imitate my voice for many years. And then someone directly asked him, like, is that you in the film? And he's like, just have to wait and see, which is classic business lingo for cannot confirm or deny or all that nonsense. So I'm going to say it's him. It sounds like him. If it sounds like him and he wheels into a shot, paint me Professor X. It's huge news and it's exciting. I saw an interesting video before we really get into the Spider-Man talk, though. I saw an interesting video that mentioned this was their chance to try something different. Now, that being said, this is a multiverse Professor X. So we don't know if we're going to get this, if they open the doors to the X-Men in the primary story arc, the primary MCU story arc, they could easily put in any Professor X if they wanted to. But they're leading with this. And that being said, I'm curious. I think now what begs the question is how much of the X-Men world are they bringing in, or are they just bringing back the actors and retconning everything else?
You know what I hope is? I hope the answer to that question is they're not bringing much. That's just me, because I feel like I mean, you and I have done a bunch of episodes now, Ryan, where we say like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if Wolverine was played by this guy now or whatever?" And I want to see that. I want to see the MCU's version of Wolverine. I want to see the MCU's version of Rogue, and I want their versions to be blue and yellow suit with the black thing and green and yellow, and I'm really, really Southern sugar. I want to see the candy colored versions of these characters that we didn't get in the Fox movies. And I feel like if you just grab Hugh Jackman and Anna Paquin and shove them back on screen and say, here they are, they're back, you're not going to get that different flavor. You're just going to get them being like, hey, we're back, and that's enough to do. And I don't want that. So I hope it's just Xavier wheeling out on that chair, Ralph Boner at his side, and they're just chatting it up with the doctor, and Xavier's like, hey, listen, this is a wonderful Patrick Stewart I'm doing right now. It sounds like he's right in the room with me, but he's like, listen, doctor, you don't know how big the multiverse is. And then he just goes on and talks about the concept of this. Maybe he knows about Kang. I don't know, but I just want him to sort of be the Patrick Stewart can be the common thread. I don't want a whole ball of yarn of common threads. Let's just, the MCU is so good at giving us new interpretations of people. Let's keep that up.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I think it needs to be fresh. It needs to be different. I think the most creative approach, because as a Marvel fan, as speaking from Marvel fandom, I think what I'd like to see the most is them say that the cartoon is the main story.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
Could you imagine? Because think about it. They tried. That's why Sir Pats was casted as Xavier, because he sounded and gave that same sort of feel with that character. You can't deny the similarities there. And I think
in real life, I wouldn't be surprised if he does train mutants in Westchester. Like, that's just, he's 100%. So close to
100%. And who's to say that the animated series, why they are continuing it, is to kind of get you caught up and kind of modernize them into like what's been going on in their world. And then you don't even have to do kind of like a recap X-Men movie or anything to try to catch them up, because all the groundwork is done. You literally just start throwing in your cameos or do your new movies like that have different characters and all this stuff. Like, you could literally just pick up and run with it.
Especially because something that would make both you and I excited is if they go that route, that means it's very likely we get Juggernaut, and it's very likely we get the Shi'ar Empire.
That's right. And it would feel very MCU building. Like, you get everything. You get Sinister, you get Apocalypse, all said and done in the cartoon, and then you just bring them in. Like, literally, like, all you have to do is say that the animated series is canon to the MCU, and then Bob's your uncle. The rest is history. But that being said, speaking of cameos, speaking of story arcs, and speaking of the MCU, let's go back to this request that was done by Jonathan E. Davis. He said he wanted a second attempt at Spider-Man, our view on Spider-Man No Way Home. And he was talking about his love for Spider-Man. I was beyond inspired to see him just really put his heart and soul into talking about it. Biggest character grew up with, and that meant a lot to him, and that he related a lot to him. It's a very powerful story to hear, and he really wanted our real take at Spider-Man. So we're listening. We're gonna give you our second run. So this is take two this is our rewatch, I should say, actually our rewatch of Spider-Man No Way Home. And though we haven't rewatched it since the movie came out, I can confidently say I remember it quite well, to get back into it. So Fantasia, my friend, my brother, let's jump into it and jump right into the action, as the movie was so smart in literally picking up exactly where the last movie ended. So let's talk about your thoughts and feelings there. So because one of the things I think is really cool is because they're doing these interconnected stories, is that, you know, when you're doing a trilogy of movies, one of the things that it always does is they always kind of seem to tell that time is past. They always try to show that there's time has passed since these events of the sequel. We're moving forward. This movie literally starts where the last one ended, and it jumps right into the action.
I love when movies do that. I feel like I wish more of them did. I wish more series did. I was just, you know, I do this thing every 3 months that I put on my YouTube channel where I try to watch as many movies as I can that I have never seen before. And the rule is they have to be at least a year old. And then I do like one big collective thing where I'm like, this is what I watch. And minor spoilers for what's coming up, but for January, February, and March, one of the franchises that I've never seen before that I watched is the Jason Bourne movies. Ooh. And those are really, well, that's like trilogy at least, is really good at, hey, we're picking up right where we left off. In fact, we might even backtrack a bit to show you some stuff we missed that goes in. Like, they're really good at doing that. The way 2 seeped into 3 was like, oh, wonderful. So this being able to do that is something that it's like, I can't believe it took this long for the MCU to have that happen. I mean, you could argue Ragnarok to Infinity War, where it's like, what's that ship? And then we start with, this is a bad ship, right? But I think that's the closest we've come. So it's so nice to see them really start to do that. And it's just so nice in general to revisit this movie with you, because we want to remind people we had to be super quiet when we recorded the first episode because Isabella was in the next room. We didn't want to spoil anything for her, and this is a movie filled with spoilers. And it's also a very dense movie, so it makes sense that we would do a second episode on it this soon too, because it's just, there's so much there to unload. There's one thing that I totally forgot to bring up that I'll bring up kind of when we get to it that I wanted to ask you about. But there's lots going on, and to start where we left off I feel like there's people who would argue like, oh, that's alienating the viewers who didn't see part 2, and you should never do that. And that seems to be a big complaint just in general. You know, when you hear people who are like anti-MCU, they're like, oh, why does everything have to tie together? And it's like, you remember the 1980s, right? When every franchise had 19 sequels, but none of them tied together. You remember how much hot garbage we got from that? Like,
yeah.
We should be on our knees thanking them for finally, you know, having the decency to tie story threads together. One of my favorite podcasters, Matt Gorley, I was just listening to him, and he was making a joke about the Children of the Corn. Have you ever seen any of those? I know you don't like horror, but Children of the Corn has 9 movies to its name, the Children of the Corn franchise. And he was making this long-winded joke about how, because they were made in the 80s and 90s, how like, oh, they all tie together so beautifully. And when you get to part 10, you really see just how it all connects. And like, he's being sarcastic about it because that was the way it was back then. Nobody gave a shit. The people who watched, the people who made like Friday the 13th Part 5, you could make a safe bet they didn't even see Friday the 13th Part 4, and they didn't care. They're just like, I'm on cocaine, here's Jason. Action. Right? So I'm so glad now that we live in a world where we're still living, you know, nothing's changed. Everything is still getting 100 sequels, but except now the thing that has changed is the people making those sequels, they care a little bit more. And you get stuff like this. So to kick off into an immediate follow-up, it's not only nice for us, but it makes total sense, because if you would have time jumped from this, you miss a crucial part of the story, and you miss crucial parts of how the characters react to what's going on. There is a world where this movie could have started in the wintertime when he goes and sees Strange, but you need that time to show how things have regressed in Peter's life.
Also, a good movie tactic too is to literally see the character running from something, because it starts to get you, like, you're trying to like catch up and you're like, oh, what's going on? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're just trying to like, what's happening? And once that happens, it really kind of creates that synergy. Now the interesting thing about this run of Spider-Man is, of course, it is an adaptation, and they cover things that isn't exactly spelled out for you. And they kind of modernize it in their own way. First of all, like, Mary Jane is Michelle Jones, you know what I mean? Like, and on top of that, Uncle Ben, they don't even show him. They don't show him. We never even they don't talk about it. Well, they reference him very little, very briefly. And so there are things that make this movie there are things that make this trilogy feel like it's a different Spider-Man, but we're along for the ride. And I think what's crazy is this movie does a great job of adding chaos to this adaptation, and getting you kind of looking around. You're a tour guide in this, or sorry, you're being taken on a tour of this MCU world through Spider-Man's eyes, which is kind of neat, because Spider-Man is not exactly an MCU character. He's Sony's character. He's Sony's character living in an MCU world. And so
Yeah,
to
he's
kind
on
of
loan.
he's on loan, right? So to live through his eyes is really fun, because it's fun to see him engage with all these characters. So speaking of which, like, we go through the whole run through scene, which I love, and there's still that kind of humor, this kind of teenage humor, that's played there. And the Spider-Man, a lot of people still argue that this is not the Spider-Man from the comics. This is not even the cartoons that I grew up with. This is not the same Spider-Man. And in fact, I would even argue, if you do say that, I would even argue, how is he different? He's got relationship problems. He's trying to manage his relationship. He's trying to figure out how he can make money. So he needs to have like a job of some kind and make money so he can have an income and all that wonderful stuff. And he's always trying to fix the mistake he made with letting Uncle Ben down and Uncle Ben dying. He's always he blames himself and he tries to fix that. So these are like the core elements that kind of really make Spider-Man who he is. And as long as you respect those core examples, and DC lately hasn't been doing that until very recently. They've started fixing characters, and I'll be curious to see if Batman does the same thing. But you take Superman, for example. When you look at Superman in Justice League and even Man of Steel, they take all the core concepts of Superman and throw it right out the window, because they were trying to modernize them, which makes sense, because we live in a world where like people have different views and all this stuff. But the whole point of Superman is to rise above all that and be your best version of yourself. That's the whole message of Superman. And in Man of Steel and Justice League, he doesn't rise above. He makes decisions, and things happen because of it. And he's like, I'm just trying to be good. No, you weren't trying to be good. You wouldn't kill people if you're trying to be good. You know what I mean? You would have found a solution, because that's what Superman does. But the CW series, Superman and Lois, or Clark and Lois, or whatever, that show respected the core things about Superman. And that's why with Spider-Man and the MCU characters, they focus on those core elements of each character that makes them who they are. And as long as those core elements are respected, then you can kind of play with and bend the rules of the character a little bit. And this is kind of interesting, because again, Spider-Man in the comics, his identity never kind of gets fully out there, but this time around, we live in a modern world, social age, and for Mysterio to really take advantage of that is really fun to see, and scary. Like, this is a scary time for Spider-Man. Like, and this character is a very innocent character. So that was huge to me. That they're really playing this up. And on top of that, by making such a drastic move, as a Marvel fan, they're like, I'm looking at Marvel like, how are you going to fix this? Like, how are you going to convince me that he's going to get out of this with no scratches? You know what I mean? Like, all right, that everything's going to be all stitched and put away, because we know it's a trilogy and you need to wrap up the main arc of this story. So how are you going to get away with this, Marvel? How are you going to do it? And that's what I love about this opening sequence, is like, is the big question is, how are you going to get away with this? How are you going to get away with this story? And how are you going to fix it?
Well, first of all, I have to step in and defend my friend Superman for a second.
Try.
The world is way too hard on this Superman here. We have to remember that there was a 5-chapter arc planned for these characters, 5 movies, and the world got to see 2.5 of them before WB was like, nope. So that's an actual
That's all, folks.
That's exactly what the head of WB did, verbatim. So the journey that he was supposed to go on, and that Batfleck was supposed to go on, and Wonder Woman, we never got to see that journey the way it was intended. And I guarantee you that there is, we're supposed to see him make mistakes and stumble in the first movie because it's the first movie. And we're supposed to see him become the Superman and eventually rise above everything, as you so beautifully put it. But if he starts off that way, then he's got nowhere to go for 4 movies. So he needed the space to grow, and a studio didn't let him do that because so we ended up with an unfinished product. So Superman, I trust you.
No, I agree with you, man. I'm a big Henry Cavill fan. The man represents nerds like no other. The man represents nerds like no other. He's literally what a nerd should be, being the best version of themselves. And again, it's not his fault. I totally get that. What I'm also saying is CW got it right. Like, CW did a modern Superman and made it work. They changed things, but they respected the core. And this trilogy with Spider-Man, bringing it back, is respecting the core that makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. And it's interesting that this movie kicks off in a position that you normally would not find Spider-Man in. He always hides his identity and figures out a way to keep everything all neat and tidy. And this movie is clever in that whole arcing sense, with the whole how he covers up his identity. But the fun thing is the beginning of this movie makes you think, man, how is he going to live as public enemy number 1?
Yeah, and it must be so scary because he's so young. He's not the adult that Toby and Andrew were, so he's got a lot of the stakes feel higher to see this kid go through this stuff. And then on top of that, what I found beautiful was the whole idea of, and they gave this away in the trailers too, which was like a cool way to show us what this movie is going to be about, is the idea of, all right, here's a big mistake I made. We're going to undo the mistake, but it's also going to do something which to me is one of the scariest concepts ever in life, which is to undo the progress of life itself. It's basically the sense of losing your game before you can save on a much darker and horrible scale. And the thought of like, okay, all this progress I made, my relationship with MJ, my best friend, my aunt, they won't remember me. All of this is gone. All the progress we made as human beings living our lives is gone. It's not worth it. It is. I will take the slings and arrows and bricks and J. Jonah Jameson's all the live long day. Fine, if it means if somebody told me I could have $1 million, but I wouldn't have people like you in my life, I'm like, no, I'm picking Ryan J. Whitehead.
Yeah. So. Bless your heart. Bless your heart. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And so we kick off into the chase, and I love that even in the opening scene, you're seeing him deal with all the things that make him Spider-Man, right? Like, he's got to do the right thing. He's got to figure out how he's gonna do the right thing. He's got to juggle his relationship with Mary Jane, literally, because she's there.
He's watching the DVD of the movie Do the Right Thing.
And then on top of that, right? Like, he's just trying to be himself, right? So the swinging through the city is fun. He gets to the apartment. It's all a great time. And then he ends up getting arrested, and everyone debated the court, in the prison scene when he's like, he should get a lawyer and everything. And Marvel did a good job of what's the word?
Bait and switch.
bait and switch. Yes, thank you. They bait and switch because everyone was expecting Matt Murdock to be in the prison or in the police station there, but he doesn't show. And I could swear in the theater when we went, there was a moment where people like just you could feel the energy in the room, like, okay, he's not going to be there. subverting expectations. That's what I was thinking of. So they subverted expectations because you can feel in the room. Everyone's like, okay, so I guess they're not getting Matt Murdock or whatever. And then they're like, don't say anything. And then then they cue like, okay, we need to lawyer up. Like May knows things are going down and they don't say it, but May is like, okay, this is getting real. I need to do something about it. Then they bring in the biggest cameo in less than 30 minutes. They drop one of the biggest cameos that this movie people were expecting. But again, they subverted those expectations by not putting him where you think he was going to be. Mm-hmm. And then you see the shot. He's holding his cane and he's there, and you hear the voice, and the crowd for us went wild. They just screamed. I screamed, and it was nuts. It was like the theater went through so many emotions during this movie. And this was the firework that started it all. So everyone's losing their mind, and there he is, and you hear the voice, and you see him being the lawyer that he is. And honestly, I think for the longest time, of course, this is what Feige always wanted, was to literally be able to just put characters wherever he wants. Like if two characters need to run into each other, then he'll make that happen. To be fair, I don't think he got to do it as much as he can do it now. I think that, if you look at the early MCU where you think two characters should have met, and everything should have made it happen, it didn't happen. And I think that's because, again, the politics of Marvel at that time was a bit tricky. But this is where Kevin Feige wanted Marvel to be. He wanted scenes like that to happen all the time. Yes. Now, what I'm concerned was that a glorified cameo? And then, and again, I say this knowing that there's been rumors and speculations that there is a Daredevil series coming, and and that we will be seeing more. We're going to see more Daredevil at some point. But I hope these aren't glorified cameos. If they are, if that's all we get, I'm glad we got it. But I hope that's not like, hey, guess what? It's Daredevil. Da, 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 da. I hope that there's reasons why. I hope we see Matt Murdock in She-Hulk. I want that more. Because Kevin Feige said it was his goal from the beginning of the MCU. He wanted all this cross-pollination between Marvel projects. And I want to see so much more of that. I want to see, if we're in a court world, you better believe I better see Jennifer Walters and Matt Murdock in that scene. Even Foggy Nelson. Bring back Foggy Nelson and Karen Page. Bring those characters back. If I'm in a court area, I better see those characters. If I don't, then that's going to hurt my expectations for future projects, because I want to see more. I think, and I've been seeing this a lot, is Kingpin and Hawkeye. It was great. He was there. It was awesome. They teased him so much and everything, but he wasn't there as much as I would like him to be. They should have fleshed out his story more there. Same with Falcon and Winter Soldier. They brought back Zemo. They really hyped up Zemo. Zemo didn't do all that much after his one little scene there. And you know what I mean? And even the bigger cameos with other characters. These cameos, Kang was one episode in Loki. How cool would it have been if he was more of 2 or 3 episodes? You know what I mean? I'm worried, but I know it's one of those things where it's Ryan, just be patient. You're gonna get more. But I'm worried right now that these cameos, they pop in and they make a big presence, but that's it. That's all we see of Matt Murdock for the entire movie. And I'm okay with that. I am, but I hope these characters have more story in these stories. You know what I mean? I hope there's more to build off of. And the same goes for Multiverse of Madness. I hope with Professor X, it's not that one scene that we see him in. I want to see him more,
I don't think you have anything to worry about, sir. I think I mean, like Kevin's
Can
saying,
you say that with confidence?
I can say it with confidence and authority, damn it. Kevin saying how this was what he wanted all along. I mean, you know, him and every other child of the 90s who had Fox cartoons growing up, like this is what we've wanted. And I know he understands that. And I feel like every fan collectively understands. Like there's nobody in the MCU world right now in terms of either making it or watching it who's sitting there thinking, I wonder if anybody doesn't want crossovers. Like, no, there's nobody thinking that. So
yeah,
the Daredevil being in one scene and then not coming back is perfect because at the end of the day, it's not really his story. This is just like a little nice way to say he's back. And these little things like that, and like Kingpin, of course, I wanted more Kingpin too. I'm right there with you, but if these are just a way to tell us they are back and you will see them more, then that's totally okay with me because it's the box of chocolates thing. I love opening a new Marvel thing and not knowing who's going to appear. Like right now, there's all these rumors going around that a big character in She-Hulk is going to be Howard the Duck. Like that is beautiful. It's like, sure, I never expected that, but he's part of the world. Why not? There's no good reason not to have him in there. And that's what I want to keep seeing. I want to keep seeing, all right, this is Captain Marvel 2, but hey, you know what? We're going to also see Rhodey because, you know, we got Don Cheadle and he wants to do like he wants to have like a 20-minute part in Captain Marvel 2. Great. That's beautiful. And all these things are what makes it feel to me like it exactly what we wanted to see. Because this movie in particular, No Way Home, and I know you agree with me, sir, I've never seen a movie that felt more like that Fox Spider-Man cartoon than this film. Because not only does the Daredevil thing feel like it's straight out of that cartoon, where it's like, you know, he's not even in the suit. It's just like, I know who that guy is. I recognize those red sunglasses. I know what's going on here. But then having Doctor Strange show up and Strange be part of it all and be a big part of the plot, and then have this giant team up of villains, and then to tackle the like that is all ripped straight out of that animated series. And the more these movies start to feel like those, the more happier this guy will be. I'm using, for those listening, I'm pointing with my two thumbs at my own face. So those cameos will never feel to me like they're wasting our time. Even if we never see Professor X again, he's a special case because to me it's like we've had 25 years or whatever. Like I'm good. Like even though I love him, as long as Patrick Stewart's around, sure, keep doing stuff. But if we get that Rhodey thing in Captain Marvel 2 and he's not a huge part of the plot, but he's there to like give them some information or something, that's what I signed up for. So I'm all there for it.
No, 100%. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm very happy it happened. I'm worried though that they'll drop these cameos and sometimes that may be the end of it. You know what I mean? Like, what if like Jessica Jones comes into play and then we only see her the one time? Like, I don't want that because I think Jessica Jones, I think it's Kristen, I can't remember her name. Ritter, thank you. I think that I think she did an amazing Jessica Jones. Like, I don't want to see another one. No. You know what I mean? I want her. So the cameo was perfect. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy about it. I hope they keep using Daredevil in some way, shape, or form. I'm worried that sometimes they'll drop in a cameo and it may not be enough. Like, you know what I mean? Like they'll drop it in just for hype's sake, and then that will be it. You know what I mean? So, but this Daredevil cameo was perfect. It was a great way to subvert expectations and yet still give us Daredevil. And the timing was beautiful too, because we got Daredevil. We got Daredevil in Spider-Man. And then literally a week later, like almost a week later, we got Kingpin and Hawkeye, which was perfect. Wasn't it even like we got Kingpin and then 2 days later we got Spider-Man? Sorry, it was the other way around. It was 2 days. Oh man, it was nuts. Kingpin came first.
He's the first
Kingpin
one.
came
He's the best
first.
one.
Yeah, that's right. So this movie did a great job of a great opening act one. It was chaos and panic, and again, like how is Marvel going to tie this story up? Like how is Spider-Man going to get back to being this character that we know? Like he can hide his identity, he can be this old school Spider-Man we know and love. So that was awesome. And then we get into act two, where he's trying to help his friends get back into school because they're affiliated with a criminal and all this nonsense. He goes to rescue the recruiter. He goes to rescue the recruiter that recruited Flash at MIT and all this stuff. And he swings in, helps the lady, and it's classic Spider-Man heroics. Can't go wrong. And then we get the return of Dr. Otto Octavius. Great scene. And again, great casting of a character. This was a great way. And I think with the Raimi Spider-Man films, it's been such a long time. I'm glad that we got Alfred Molina back. I think it's perfect. He was a great character, and it's a great way to respect that history, because they were the kind of pioneers of that storytelling. So it was great to see. And he was so fun. He played with the lines so well. You can tell he had an amazing time. And then, of course, so the battle is fun. And then what's kind of cool, and this movie does a great job of allowing the audience to be a part of the conversation, because I don't know how they anticipated things that we would want to be like those conversations where like, if I were to do it, this is how I would have done it. Like they kind of anticipate that and they throw it into the film. And the best example I have of this is they bridge the two worlds so perfectly, because the Stark nanotech goes on to Doc Ock's arms, and it's kind of like, you see Otto Octavius in it, and you feel already that he's disconnected in a manner of speaking, because he's from the different world, and he's coming after Spider-Man. And the way to bridge the two worlds and making it, and you got to be able to see it, touch it, feel it, so it exists. What a great way to do that, by adding the Stark tech onto his arm. And now he's like a part of this world. You know what I mean? And it's such brilliant visual storytelling that John did with this. And it really creates this conversation with the fans and what's going on in the movie into this beautiful experience.
Now, if he goes back to the Maguire universe and dies, somebody's going to find that Stark tech.
Well, no, because it goes back to him, right? It goes back to him.
Right. Yeah.
I saved you there.
You did.
Could have gone that way, but no, yeah, it goes back to him. But you're right. That could have happened. But it was fun to see that bridge. And so now the characters are introduced, and we get to go to Doctor Strange. And again, this is what I'm talking about. Seeing these characters mingle together. I love seeing that Doctor Strange was such a big part of this story. I think having these characters play around together. In fact, Spider-Man's movies have played much like the comics, where he hangs out with the different heroes throughout his films. Like he hangs out with Iron Man for 90% of the first one, right? Like that's the character he goes and chills with a lot. And then in the third one here, he spends a lot of his time with Doctor Strange. And I want to see more of those team up films. Like I love seeing Thor and the Hulk together. And right? And it's funny because you wouldn't normally think you wanted a Thor and the Hulk movie, but now now that it happened, I'm like, man, what else are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like Falcon and Winter Soldier. I love that duo. That duo is hilarious. I want to see more of that. That's fun. Even
Hulk and Valkyrie. I thought they were a good pair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hulk and Valkyrie. Yes, and that's what I think I want to see in the future. I want to see more Marvel team up movies. It may be. Let's say, and maybe, and I think we are getting it if you really think about it. Like even Doctor Strange, it's Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch in the second one, right? Yeah. We're seeing that more. But yeah, let's mix around the characters. Let's put together combos you wouldn't think that would happen.
I can't wait for that. I guarantee you it's happening too. It's getting to that point. Doc Ock having Alfred Molina back is beautiful, and he's just there, and it's like no time has gone by. I think I've told you this before, but I remember, like, after Far From Home, where we didn't know anything about this third movie yet, I remember turning to you at some point and saying, you know, because we're speculating, like, oh, you know, what's this third movie going to be? And I remember saying, like, I had no idea they were going to go this route at all, but I was like, I could stand to see another Dr. Octopus movie. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing him again. Like, I was figuring they would be cast, and, you know, the multiverse was the farthest thing from my mind. So it's really cool that I got my wish. I got to have my cake and eat it too, because the frosting on that cake, Ryan, was directed by Sam Raimi, and it was delicious and cheesy and quasi 1960s-ish. Oh, you want to hear something? A crazy coincidence? So you know how, like I said, I've been watching a bunch of movies, and every 3 months I talk about old movies that I've never seen that I finally get around to watching. So two completely unrelated random movies that I watched, both happened to have the actor Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. in them, who did the voice of Dr. Octopus in the animated series.
No way.
It was just a complete fluke. And I see his name in the credits. I'm like, oh, it's like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. I'm like, oh, Doc Ock. And then it happened again with a second movie, like literally a few nights later. And I'm like, what's going on? And he's just popping up everywhere, man. And he was an old man back when he was playing Doc Ock. He's long since passed away. But just getting to see him, and he's using his American accent, which I didn't know he was putting on in the cartoon. He's all like, Spider-Man, I'm quasi-Bavarian here. And then when you see him in these movies, he's just like, hello, I'm an American man, and this is how I speak. And you can just hear the little trickles. You can hear the little bits.
You hear that tone. That tone, you know? You can't mistake the tone in the voice, that's for sure.
I was just wishing somebody would wheel like Felicia Hardy's mom in front of them and see him get mad and be like, oh, Hardy.
If I got to run into him, I'd just love to hear him say this, like, you know, how does it feel to do something but be helpless to do so? Like, oh, man. Oh, God, I just want to hear that. Anyway, yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I mean, the Spider-Man animated series deserves as much respect as the X-Men one does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just as much as a staple in the Marvel animated world as it is in the or as it is with the X-Men. And yeah, no, so again, I agree. Like Alfred Molina, you know, the have your cake and eat it too. Like it's totally there, and it's so nice to see that. And then of course we get Defoe, and the trailer does a good job of showing that scene, the bridge fight scene, and still not giving you enough. Like literally, they gave you nothing. They're like, yeah, you can expect this to happen, but it's not gonna nearly be as cool as what's gonna happen later. And going to Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, and what's interesting that I like that the movies are starting to do now, it's frustrating as hell as a fan, but they're giving you context of what's happening with this character, you know, during this timeline. Like
Yes.
literally like this is something you don't normally see. Like literally you'll see stacked events. So at this point, like, you know, this snow thing we probably wouldn't normally see till the Multiverse of Madness, and seeing like, you know, what's happening to the Sanctum Sanctorum. What I like is like Spider-Man goes in and this is happening to him now. And we're checking in with this character. And that to me is interesting because first of all, we have no context as to what's really going on. They say what it is, they say what happened, but you're not given much context as to what Doctor Strange has been doing behind the scenes. Like we got the what if thing going on, and we got Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness thing going on. But the best part is literally it's like jumping into the middle of the book. And that's something you don't see with this kind of movie, this movie world building. You know what I mean? Like I think the best example I could say is like, you know, you'll get a Fast and the Furious movie and they'll be like, okay, we're going to go drive off and into the sunset. And then we'll check in with you 2 movies later and be like, well, we came back from the sunset and here's what we did. No, it's like you'll meet them halfway and you'll, you know, figure out what's been going on. So that was really cool. And again, we don't know that much, and you could start dissecting and playing around with it based on what you've seen from the trailer and everything. But it's cool to check in on a character. And so then they do the whole spell thing. And what I love too is they learn about the world. Now, the interesting thing here is how they live up to Spider-Man the character. So Doctor Strange is like, we need to send them all back to their deaths because, you know, that's what their destiny is and all this stuff. And Spider-Man starts hesitating. He's like, whoa, dial it back. Like, we can't do that, man. We need to like help these people. You know, these are distraught people. And to be fair, you know, I think the viewer is we could debate till our heads explode, you know, whether or not him sending them back will allow them to have a different outcome. I think personally, it's completely irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. Like, in my mind, if they're being sent back to the moment of their death, they're gonna die. Like, there's no like, stop, I'm a different person, don't kill me. That's not gonna happen. But it's about that's not what it's about. It's about Spider-Man's conscience. He doesn't want to send people to their death. He wants to know that he helped them, because that's what Spider-Man does. He doesn't like killing people, and he doesn't like fighting people. He likes helping people.
He's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Exactly.
If he has to fight people, it's out of pure defense. He's never on the offense, and that's why the symbiote suit saga is so fun, because he's taking initiative. He's being more aggressive. But this Spider-Man doesn't do that. He doesn't want to fight. He wants to resolve issues. And that's what he does in the cartoons. And that's why it's so fun when you see that's why it's so fun when you see him fight the Vulture in the first one, because he's trying to tell him that stealing is wrong. He's trying to educate the Vulture that what he's doing is wrong. And then what does he get for that? He gets a building dropped on him.
Yeah.
Right? But he's trying to stop him. He's just trying to say, like, look, you can't do that. And that's the fun of it. And that's and the scene in the car when he drops him off for the dance and everything is so perfect, because he's like, look, I can kill you right now, but you did a good thing, so I'm not gonna do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're gonna go in there and dance, and you're gonna pretend that this never happened, and I'm gonna go do my thing, and you're gonna show my daughter a good time, because that's the right thing to do. And that's his right thing to do. But then the beauty of Spider-Man is like, look, I know you're doing a bad thing, and I need to stop you from doing it. And that's what Spider-Man does. It's so good. It's so good. And so this No Way Home moment is perfect. And that's why, to me, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant what's going to happen to the villains, because it's about his conscience. He doesn't want to send them back to their deaths because it was their destiny. He wants to help them so he can change. He can feel good, because in the end, it's about him redeeming himself for losing Uncle Ben.
You got it, man. That hits the nail right on the head. That drives what he does. And, you know, it would be hard enough for him to do that for one villain, let alone 6 of them, or 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's already locking them up. I'm sure he's not a fan of keeping them behind a cage. And so the wanting to save them of it all, it's not some contrived thing to make the plot happen. It's exactly what needs to happen, because he's Spider-Man. That's just how he rolls. And then this leads to the moment that I said I forgot to talk about last time, and I want to talk about with you, because I think it's one of the coolest moments of the movie because of how subtle it is. It feels like what we call here a Marvel moment, but it feels very subtle. And it's the whole idea of, do you think you can guess what it is that I'm going to bring up?
I want to say it's the one where they're in the room and he's helping them all, and then is it the fight scene in the condo?
No, it's before that.
Before that?
Yeah.
Is it the one? It's not the Sandman.
No.
The Sandman Electro?
No.
Oh.
It has nothing to do with Sandman Electro. It's all right. Peter makes the choice. I'm not going to let you do the spell.
Oh, the fight scene in the mirror dimension, right?
The fight, even right before we get into the mirror dimension, Strange Soul kicks him.
Oh yeah.
But he can't get the box out of his hand. I love that little moment. I love just that visual. Just makes me laugh of him there unconscious, but his spider eyes are still open, and he's just He's going like this, like that. I apologize so profusely to the people who are only listening to the audio version of this, but that I love that moment, and I love just Strange is just he's completely flummoxed by the fact that he can't take that box. And I wanted to run it by you because I'm assuming, and if I'm wrong, please tell me, but I'm assuming he can't take the box because the spider sense is still working and moving his body for him. Is that what's going on there?
Well, because even though his soul has been knocked out of his body essentially, like, or his astro form or whatever, his conscience is still working, right? Like his subconscious is still working, I should say. And so he knows, because he believes in his core that he's helping them and he's doing the right thing. So he knows if he stops Strange, then he'll be able to do what he wants. And so the spider sense is protecting him. Right. If he loses the box, then he loses what he's doing. Right. And that's the whole thing. So it's that's why he's doing. You're right. It is the spider sense. It's a subconscious protection thing where he's like, nope, you can't have this, because I need to do what I need to do.
Yes. And that moment of like, because it's Doctor Strange, like this guy has done and seen shit that we can't even comprehend. So the moment of him being like, I'm just going to take a box from your hand, and he can't do that. That to me was like the equivalent of when Vision's like, here's your hammer, Thor, let's go. It's like,
oh yeah,
you think you're holding all the cards, but this other character is going to surprise you with how well they can get past your powers. And it's just like, oh, give me more of that.
That's a great Marvel moment. I got to give you props. And the reason, but that's, to me, that is a Marvel moment, but that's not my Marvel moment. But that's a good Marvel moment. But I love that scene. So getting into the fight scene with Doctor Strange. And again, I love that you're playing on that theme, right? Like, because we get another moment of true core Spider-Man where he literally uses science to stop Strange. And that is so perfect. It is so good. The fight scene is so much fun. I was wondering in the trailer why he's like, Doctor Strange is able to spin the train. And I'm like, okay, clearly it's like a mirror dimension kind of thing. But I'm like, why are they in it? Like, why is this happening? Right? Could they be traveling somewhere? Like, what's the whole deal? And I love that it was a huge fight. Like, I love it was a battle. It was fun. And I love that he used science and smarts to beat his villain, or beat his challenger. And it's so good to see. That's the Spider-Man we know and love, right? Like the spider sense defeating Mysterio is fun, but it's about the science. Like, he uses science to always outwit his villains. Like Otto Octavius. Like, that's why in Spider-Man 2, the fun part is he uses science to stop Doc Ock with the unplugging the machine and helping him stop the whole thing. Like, it's all about reason and science, and that's the fun of Spider-Man. And I loved seeing that with his battle with Doctor Strange, that he uses, I think it's trigonometry to web him up, and it's so good.
Geometry. He uses
geometry.
Yeah, it reminds me of when Lisa is teaching Bart how to play golf, and he's like, "You finally found a practical use for geometry."
Yeah. Well, no, but you also got to remember too, is continuity is king in films, and especially when you're doing something like MCU. Sebastian Stan even was quoted saying, like, Kevin Feige does not get the respect he deserves in the Hollywood world. And it's true, because you got to remember continuity too, because first we see Spider-Man in school, he's learning about geometry, he's learning about the gravity of objects, right? And he totally just guesses his way out of it, and he nails it so easily. And then later on in the same movie, he has to use the helicopter to swing into a very small window, right? And it talks about the weight of an object, because he says something cancels out because of gravity, right? So he uses the weight of the copter and uses gravity to swing in through a harder window. And it's so brilliant. And then later on, we see him use, yet again, geometry to stop Doctor Strange. So Talk about continuity of character and building it out. It's so good. So good.
Well, let's be real. Kevin Feige is fine, but
It's Kevin Feige. It's all
you'll never find continuity as good as, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, and how well it just brings everything together. The first 5 movies, it just ties it in. Kevin wishes he could reach those heights. In the meantime, he's gonna have to settle for the silver medal, though.
I mean, if we're talking about, I don't know, quantity of films, I think one completely outweighs the other.
This is me making fun of people who hate that the MCU is too connected.
I know. But seriously though, like, you got to think about those layers, and that's why that fight scene is so fun, and yet brings us back to why Spider-Man's so fun. It's all about science. And even one thing I liked in the second one was he built his new suit using science, right? He built himself a new suit using problem solving, what he's going to need, and he got rid of things and everything. So again, they're really playing up the core values of the character. And then we get the coolest scene. And again, I like that Spider-Man has his friends. He's got Ned, he's got MJ, and they're having fun and everything. But the coolest character, and completely destroyed everybody else. I'm not even going to spend too much time talking about Electro, because he was a fun character. Yes, it was nice to see him rebooted and polished a bit more. But overall, he was comedic relief, and to be fair, like, he did a good job. Don't get me wrong, he did a good job. But I think his character was comedic relief, and you kind of you're gonna be glanced over because of the 2 big players in this one, which is Doc Ock and of course our boy Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, coming back, giving us by far the best villain performance I have seen to date. I will go out on the limb. I will go out on the limb here and say that was the best Marvel villain performance I have ever seen. It was creepy. It was creepy. The knife twisting super slowly. Like, oh my God, it was so good. And he played with you. And I say you, the audience. Jonathan, I'm talking to you specifically. He played with you. And what's funny is, this is a fool me once, fool me twice, shame on me. Okay? This is a fool me twice, shame on me. Why? They did this first with Mysterio. They played with your feelings. They made you think that maybe this is a different Mysterio, because that's Hollywood storytelling for you. Maybe this is a different Mysterio. Maybe he did come from a different world where Spider-Man was bad, and he wanted to correct that this could happen. But in the end, he was the Mysterio we know and love, and it couldn't have been a better twist of a story. It was so fun. And this one, different Osborn. This is an Osborn that's trapped in a different world. He's all confused, and he hasn't had his serum, so it's wearing off. Maybe he is good. But when we got to the scene where he starts helping them all out, and then that moment where Parker walks out and the spider sense starts going off, I will tell you, the silence, you could feel it in the room. You could feel it in the theater. You could feel it. The tension was so there. And you hear him twisting the word. Oh my God. Even the lines, he's just like, oh, that spider sense of yours. Oh, or that sense of yours. You could feel it in the room. And when you feel in the room, the audience is in it. Everyone's in it. And then kicks off the coolest and most grittiest fight scene I have ever seen. And, funny enough is, the other villains with the Spider-Man trilogy, they're simple. They're simple. They have simple needs, like Vulture. He just wanted to make money so his family can be rich and be well off and get the money he deserves, and life is grand. He didn't want to kill Spider-Man. He didn't want to kill him. Doesn't like killing people. He just wants to get his stuff and get out. Mysterio doesn't want to hurt anybody. Doesn't want to hurt anybody unless he has to. But he just wants to, control the narrative, all that media stuff, and be the hero in his own image, that kind of thing, and have people listen to him. But if collateral damage happens, it happens. This Green Goblin liked killing for the sake of killing. This is a very scary character for Spider-Man, especially. This is his legit worst nightmare. And I love he calls out Aunt May and this like holy crusade. I love that word that he uses, like this holy crusade. And in comes the grittiest and best superhero fight scene in I've seen some good fight scenes. And I mean, I like to consider myself a connoisseur of fight scenes. Action movies
You are.
like my thing. And let me tell you, that was the best use of superhero powers I've ever seen. Like, dude got sidewalk slammed into the floor and went through the floor into the ground. Then he got picked up again and power bombed through another floor going down. Then on top of that, Spider-Man jumps on Goblin's shoulders and starts wailing in his face. And Dafoe's just laughing at him with the fangs and the Goblin face. And like, it's so gritty. And the best part is Goblin is just messing with him. And the best part is that Dafoe said he would do his own stunts because he needs the physicality of the character. So he wanted, and you could see it, you could feel in that room, like that performance he gives and that fight scene is so good. And they're like, Spider-Man, like the backflip drop kick into the ground, like all that stuff there was great use of a character's physical ability. The only other examples I have that really demonstrated that kind of physical prowess was Captain America in Civil War. When he has the first fight scene in Africa, you see him really use his body weight and like, really throw those hits and everything. You see it, you get a good taste of it in Winter Soldier. And there's some good moments in there, but Civil War, I think, was like a very fully polished Captain America. Like the fight scenes are just they hit so hard and they're so good feeling. But yeah, like it's Marvel is very good at doing fight scenes, don't get me wrong, but like top tier ones definitely would be, this movie is definitely right up there, right out of the gate. And I would say Civil War is another good one. And this is like with very minimal CG. And that's what I got to specify here too, is this is very minimal CG. This is a lot of wire work, but it's very minimal CG and it's super fun to watch. Like I think we only get the Lizard in one point, and he's another character you kind of glance over very quickly, but he just kind of grabs him at one point, throws him in. But the fight between Goblin and Spider-Man were mostly wire work and like just pure physicality, and I love that. Give me more of that all the time. It's just an absolute joy to watch.
This fight was so fast and furious that I remember it kind of washed over me in a blur. And it's one of the things that when I rewatch this film again, I'm going to be keeping my eyes open for, because I want to see it. I feel like there's a lot I missed because they're cutting between the other villains who are kind of scurrying out of the apartment, and Doc Ock is like, I don't want to hurt anybody, and then meanwhile Lizard's like, I'm the Lizard. I don't have a coat, but I'm the Lizard. And I think that piece of dialogue is actually lifted right out of the movie. And then you've got this great Goblin Spider fight that I just remember, like you're saying, like being thrown into walls and thrown into floors and ceilings, and it makes for something really cool and different, because Spider-Man fights are normally spectacle. It's a superhuman man versus a monster. They're these monsters of science, and these fights are always a big spectacle. But this was just ash and blood and bones and crunching plaster. It was more like a Liam Neeson action movie than a Spider-Man movie. And I think I was so caught up in the whole moment. I was so swept up in the whole, just the tide of the spider sense and everybody, being on pins and needles. I'm like, where is this going? Where's the spider sense going? What's happening? And then the fight breaks out, and the way it ends in that tragedy, I was so swept up in that. And it was bookended by these two very quiet, powerful things that I feel like my mind really just kind of went blank during parts in the middle there. So I need to see this fight again and get it in more juicy detail in my mind, because I know there's parts of it that I just couldn't catch. But at least it leads to another brave moment by the writers to just take this in a direction that's like there's no going back. We're just chugging forward, and guess what? Spider-Man's a guy who has tragedy happen to him, and here's another tragedy. You lose Aunt May, Ryan. You lose Aunt May.
Brave step forward, but this is a modern take, right? This is another example of helping a character move forward, but not only the character but the audience, right? Like, we can't cling to the Spider-Man we remember. Like, we can't cling to that the whole time. And even Holland's been saying the same thing. Like, he's like, if I'm playing Spider-Man into my 30s, like and not pass on the torch, like, I'm doing something wrong. And I agree with him. Like, I 100% agree with him. Like, you need to have a good, solid story from beginning to end, and you need to bow out gracefully. And I think, RDJ, though I would love to see him come back. I mean, if he magically comes back in Multiverse of Madness as like the Illuminati thing, 100% I would love that. But at the same time, like, he had a beginning, middle, and an end, and it was perfect. Would I want more? Of course, but I don't need more. I don't, and I definitely do not need less. It was perfect. And same with Holland. Like, this was a brave move. This was a brave move to get rid of, or to have it may be killed. But it's an important storytelling thing that needs to happen, because we know how Spider-Man has dealt with the loss of Uncle Ben, but we don't know as well, if you've read comics and stuff, then you know how it can be played out. But in the media side of things, in media representations of Spider-Man, you don't know how well he's going to deal with losing Aunt May. And that's a refreshing new take on loss with Spider-Man. And it's beautiful. Props to Tom Holland, man. This guy is epic. This guy's got some really good emotionally driven moments, and he's really good at picking up those emotionally driven moments and making you kind of grind through it. I don't know how else to say it. It's a real, like, he really knows how to find that catharsis moment and really just kind of work through it. And it's really just a joy to watch. It is so good. And it's sad. Like, it was like this theater went from like cheering that Matt Murdock was there, laughing away, and just like on this like wonderful ride. And then all of a sudden, Green Goblin, who's meant to be a nightmarish character for Spider-Man, not only changes the tone in terms of the story, but changes the tone for the audience and reminds you that this is not a fun story. And that's beautiful. That is beautiful. And the best part is they do a good job subverting expectations. You think Aunt May is going to get up, and she struggles a bit, and you have a moment where you start to doubt yourself. I did. I'm like, oh man, she's going to be in the hospital, and it's going to be another one of those kind of stories. No, she does not survive, and it is very gritty. And it's really sad. And even adding that extra layer with Favreau in it was really nice, because he actually serves as a connecting point later on, which was really smart by the director, Mr. John Watts. It was really well done. But it was a tough pill to swallow. That was a tough scene.
And I said that night to you and to everybody else, and I keep seeing it every time I talk about the movie. If they had done this with Rosemary Harris's Aunt May, I don't think I could have handled it. That would have been too sad for me to handle. And I know the character of Aunt May in the comics and just in general, I know she's been in the hospital a bajillion times, and I'm pretty sure in the comics she's probably died at least 5 times, because in the comics death is nothing to comic book writers, unfortunately. But I've never experienced a story myself where Aunt May dies. I've never read any of those comics. She never died in the cartoon. She never died in any other movie. So to see it happen was weird, because there's this character that I've been familiar with. She's one of my favorite characters from Spider-Man's universe. I've known her since I was a little boy. I attached myself to Peter Parker as a kid when I watched that show, because I was always living and staying with my aunts, because my mom was a single mom who's always working. So I was constantly, when Aunt May is like, "Eat your wheat cakes, Peter," I'm like, "That's me. An aunt is always putting wheat cakes in my plate." Yeah. So that was like the thing that I saw Spider-Man as like a a big brother of mine. Like, hey, he's like me. So growing up, Aunt May was sort of infusing that DNA as just like she's part of this story. So to finally be witness to a story where we see the end of Aunt May, that really shook me. And I think I just have to give the proper amount of credit to the writers for going that route. Marvel is pretty good. The MCU is pretty good, rather, at not shying away from these big moments that take turns and turn the story in a direction from which there is no going back. Even though this whole movie is about trying to undo one of those turns, we see that can't be done. And it's just storytelling choice after storytelling choice that pushes us to new territory. And I applaud them for doing that.
Yeah, I applaud them for doing that as well. And that whole scene, like when Goblin starts twisting everything, that was my Marvel moment. Like that Goblin lived up to exactly what he does in comics and stories and everything. And it's a beautiful adventure from there. And the fight scene is just Marvel, like comic book page after comic book page. Like, and I think that's the other smart thing that people don't pick up on with that fight scene is the reason why it's going through the walls. It's like going through the different panels of a comic book.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
Right? Because it's fun too, because it's shot in a hallway. So it's a perfect kind of square. And you just like the power bomb, there's this kind of slow motion moment where you see them like about to go through it. And it looks like you could snapshot that and say, that's a comic book moment. But that was my Marvel moment. But I agree with you. It was brave of the writers. And again, it's a great way to show the spectrum of this movie. Like this, like, usually with Marvel movies, you have this kind of predictable flow to it. Like it's, when the movie's going to turn for better and then, happy ending because it's a Disney movie. No, not this movie. This movie made you think it was going to be fun and then it wasn't. And then just when you think it's going to be fun again, it isn't. and they turn it around and make it feel fun, but it's not. And then finally, this, we hit this note, this really sour note. And at this point, I think as fan expectations are the way they are, I will argue to this day, you could dissect, all the internet was like, yeah, the other Spider-Men are in it. It's going to happen. It's all there. There is a small part of you that just doubted that was going to happen. It could have been, but you doubted. And the movie makes you feel like this sour note, like they give you this sour note because it almost makes you forget everything else. Like, let me ask you, I'm going to take a moment, like you guys take a moment as we're talking about this, but take a moment for yourselves and really think about it. Were you thinking about anything else during Aunt May's death sequence?
No.
Right? Fantasia shook his head. And that's my point. You were not. Because then, because you feel like Spider-Man does. Like, what's the point? What's the point of all this? And that's when the beauty comes in. They found a way to change the tone of the movie yet again into Act 3, and they bring in the other two Spider-Men. And it is so good. It is so believable and so well done. Oh man. And again, talk about continuity of humor is Ned jokes about how he has magic in him, in his magic hands, but he creates the portal and then he brings in Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. And that was such, like, the room lit up after just feeling completely miserable. And you know what? I love what they did for this, because Garfield now, he's feeling himself again, because he had depression after Amazing Spider-Man 2. Like, I heard terrible stories. Oh man, dude, I heard he went through some rough times, like personally after, because
of Spider-Man.
Because of Amazing Spider-Man 2, it hurt his career. It hurt his personal self. Apparently, he went through a lot of depression. And you gotta remember too, like, this is when superhero movies were getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And after Iron Man and Batman Begins and all that, and then you get something like Amazing Spider-Man 2, which had a lot of issues and problems. But it wasn't Garfield's fault. He was a good Spider-Man in my opinion. But
he didn't write it.
Yeah, he didn't write it. He for sure didn't write it. But man, did he redeem. And to be fair, I think he stole some of the scenes. Like, he did a really good job. And we get him, and then we get Maguire both in the scene together, and it was so fun to see. The audience exploded. I'm pretty sure heads literally exploded in our theater, just like completely.
Yeah, the guy behind me died. It was not pleasant. The dry cleaner charged me extra to get that all out of my shirt.
Yeah, it was just, oh man, explosions were everywhere. But it was great. It was fun to see them. And again, the humor that they did for this movie, it's just top tier stuff. Like, Garfield was hilarious. Like, the whole, like, I'm not gonna, like, I don't need to climb the roof. Why do you want me to climb the ceiling? Like, and it was really good. And Maguire was like, you didn't miss a beat. The second he was back in, and you have to remember, he was the one that hasn't been the character in his character's shoes the longest. And he comes back in, and it's as if he never left. Like, It's so good. His tone, his approach, his humor, the line delivery. You could argue that this man is completely different nowadays, but for him to revisit that and just be like, capture that essence, oh my God.
The way Toby delivers his dialogue is very unique. He played Peter in a really shy way, where it was hard for Peter to get a sentence out, a full sentence. Mm-hmm. Like, I just wanted to know if you were still in the village, MJ. Like, he had the shyness down to a science. Mm-hmm. And it's a very different kind of Peter than Garfield or than Holland. So when he comes out of that portal, and he's got his hands in his pockets, and he's like, hey, this portal just opened. Hope it's okay if I just like, I'm just like, there he's back. Those 14 years have not passed, and he's just back, and it's the same Peter. And I think that's so beautiful, man, what you said about how the movie played with us and took us for that ride and played the sour note before the symphony and the trumpets blared and mm-hmm. the pearly gates opened, and we got to that moment. Because with Marvel, we fall into that trap a lot, unfortunately. And it's not really anybody's fault but ours, because it just stems from our own expectations. But when we're watching a new Marvel thing, inevitably, like, all during Shang-Chi and all during Eternals, even though I'm having a good time, I'm sitting there like, who's going to pop up at the end? Like, what, we think of those MCU moments, we think of those credit scenes or whatever, and it can sometimes take us out of the experience, and we forget to just enjoy the story and have a good time. And that danger was very prevalent, because everybody going into that movie is thinking, are we getting these Spider-Man? That's all anybody was asking is this going to have multiple? Are we going to see all three? Are they coming? Are they coming? And the movie so expertly and so craftily makes us forget about it for a moment, because, like you said, Ryan, you're right. Nobody was thinking of anything else in that moment except, oh my God, we lost Ant-Man. Nobody is sitting there thinking like, how much longer is left? Where's Maguire? Right? Because something big and important has just happened, and the sour note is still resonating with us. And when they cut away from that, and sort of, it was something in the score. There was just like a piece of string, because sad music is playing, and Aunt May is passing away. So the orchestra is playing, and the last remnants of string fade away to silence. And it's the first silence we have had since before the spider sense scene. Right? Because that was a whole mess of noise. And when that silence finally hits again after the death, is the shot of MJ and Ned sitting at the table in his apartment, just kind of looking at the wood and just quiet. And as soon as that violin stopped playing, Ryan, and the silence came on the screen, and I'm looking at them, that was when I had the thought. I'm like, here they come.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right, the sour note continued, and it played in all of our heads and all of our hearts. And it wasn't till we got to that moment where there's no music at all that I felt like this is the right time, not only for us as fans, but for the characters. This is when you need 2 more Spider-Men to come and show Storm and Norman what's up. So that's beautiful that you called attention to that, because they took us for that ride, and they did it with all the skill of like that was Palpatine himself could not have crafted and planned that out better, as far as I'm concerned.
You couldn't, man. I like, again, this is why I cannot wait for John Watts to do Fantastic Four, because again, he took Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's, again, we've seen reinventions of Spider-Man and all that stuff, but in the end is we still wanted the core Spider-Man, like, you know what I mean, like the comic book Spider-Man. But it's hard because he is a dated character. He's a very dated character, but he gets revamped in the comic books quite often to a point where it's like, okay, I buy this. But this was a true revamp of the character, and I can't say that enough. I really can't, because it's such a modern feeling Spider-Man, and nothing has come even close to what they did in this movie. And so getting back into it is the Spider-Man come in, and then we get the classic shot of like when something tragic happens, of course you're going to find Spider-Man in some old classy looking building, like the school, for example, is perfect example. And the rain's on him and everything, and he's just torrential downpour, and he's going through the most miserable time ever. But the Spider-Man come in and make him, realize again that, like, hey man, like, we have a responsibility, like that's why Aunt May taught us what we know and all that, and Uncle Ben especially. So getting into the school scene is fun. I love the dialogue between the Spider-Man. It's so good. The comedy is so funny. I love that, like, they talk about the webbing.
They talk about everything the fans talk about. I think that's why it resonated so well. It wasn't just a couple of really good writers, because they are writing really good jokes. It wasn't that. It was a couple of really good writers understanding that at this point, this dialogue has already been written for 20 years by every fan ever. And all we have to do is just sit back and let it come out.
Yeah. No, it again, like we talked about that theme earlier of simply put, like, keeping the audience a part of the conversation. You know what I mean? Because like they anticipated everything we wanted to ask, or we have asked in internet conversations. Like, does the webbing come out anywhere else? Like the joke is so good. Like, and it's so well done. It's like he's like, how do you do that? Like, and he's like, I don't know how I breathe. I just do, right? And it's so good because it literally wraps up every question we've ever had about these characters, and it's so fun. And I love the humor. I think my favorite dialogue is my favorite dialogue actually comes a little bit after, but like I love the humor where he's like, oh, you guys fought so many cool things. I just fought a guy in a mechanized rhino costume. So lame. He's like, hey, back it up. You're amazing. Like that moment is so fun. It's so like we all felt that together. Like Garfield, the audience, and the characters all felt that together. And you can't, I don't care. Even the best Oscar movies couldn't come close to that genius level of writing.
No, they can't. And to like reiterate what you said earlier, Ryan, about how they never lost sight of who Spider-Man is, right? Mm-hmm. This might be the only time I can think of where you get together 3 superheroes and they never fight once.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's Spider-Man. He doesn't just jump to like, I'm going to beat you up. He's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He's always trying to make friends with people down to the last second. Sandman is like bringing the Chrysler building onto him, and he's like, Flint, let's talk, man. Right? Like, that's just how so I can't understate enough how rare that is for a team up to happen, even though they are all the same guy, for a team up to happen without starting with a fight. Like Spider-Man and Wolverine in that cartoon, they eventually took on Herbert Landon and the Hobgoblin, but they tussled first and they knocked their heads together, and that alley was all the worse for it. So that's
Punisher, same deal.
Punisher. But they're just supportive of each other from minute one. And this whole thing of like, you're amazing, man. Like that is, they're
It's so good.
they're there for each other, and it just warms my heart.
Yeah.
Like
And
it's exactly what it needed to be.
and the fight scene is the last fight scene is good. Is it as good as the Goblin versus Spider-Man fight scene? No, I don't think it is. It's very CG heavy, but it is fun. There are fun moments watching them all come together, and I love how they fail at first, and they kind of team huddle, and I love that he's like, hey, you know what? I don't want to say it, but I'm an Avenger, and they're like, what's that?
Cool. What's an event?
I love like that was priceless. Like they could have played that up. They could have been like, "Oh, cool, you're an Avenger." Like I love that. Like McGuire's like, "What's that?" And then Garfield's like, "Is that a band?" It was so good. But yeah, that was my favorite dialogue between the characters. I was almost in tears laughing because that was priceless and so funny
and surreal. Just hearing Toby say the word Avenger.
Like, exactly.
That's still so
yes.
Surreal.
Yeah, it's so surreal too. And it's the language, right? It's that Marvel language that you love, the love that the characters are using because it reinforces the world without having to see it. Like that's another thing with cameos too. Is it's like one thing I did love about what Hawkeye did was you saw the reinforcement of Kingpin throughout the entire story. Like you saw the drop of the Fat Man, Fat Man's garage and the big guy, all this stuff. Like it was all there and all really reinforced it. And the same thing, I mean, you could say the same thing for other moments and stuff like that, but the constant reinforcement of that is perfect. And overall, the fight scene was fun, dealing with the different monsters and like, hey, boom, okay, you're healed, moving on. Otto, and I love that Otto was actually trying to prevent things. Like he became kind of an anti-hero, which he does more often than not. But I think the fight I love the most is again Spider-Man versus Goblin. It's so good, and there's a lot of redemption stories here, because the main story redemption for Maguire's Spider-Man was the loss of Uncle Ben and redeeming that, and Garfield's was the loss of Gwen Stacy and trying to redeem that, and he got it with the MJ moment. And it's a beautiful moment. Oh my God, it's really heartfelt. And again, I hope Maguire is really loving this feeling he's getting, and I hope he gets that constant praise and all that stuff because he deserves it. Like that performance in this movie is really fun to watch. It's really just positive endearment. Like it's just so endearing to watch him be the positive self and having a good time. And then Maguire is having his redemption story because he lost Aunt May. He's dealing with a ton of loss, and again, even with Uncle Ben and everything, right? So he has that moment of redemption as well. And the interesting part is Maguire saving Goblin. It was so fun.
Yes,
and it's such a strong moment. It's so good.
Look how much trouble it caused to have that glider go through Norman for him. It caused 2 whole movies of just whiny James Franco, and nobody wants that. So, I mean, depending on who you ask, nobody wants regular James Franco. So he is stepping in the way of Big Brother. It's like a Big Brother, grabbing drugs out of his little brother's hand and being like, no, trust me. You will regret this. That was a beautiful moment, and I thought for a second we were going to lose Toby. So I'm pleased that he didn't die. But what's interesting about that is, now this might be wishful thinking because of course you and I, our answer would be like, yes, please. But why save his life, Ryan, unless that means we're going to see him again?
Maguire, you think?
Yeah.
It's true. I think it's because again, I think if you let him die, then you want to see what's going to happen to him. But now that he lives, it's kind of like, okay, you can put him back where he was and let him live on his life. Like I think it again, it plays to the wrapping up of the story and it does a good job.
Oh,
bless you. And so it's a perfect experience. It was so good. But yeah, that was a great moment. And then the spell to reverse everything. I mean, yes, You know, it's funny because if you look at the whole fight scene, the last one, it's really gimmicky. Like they have all these tools that are gonna just magically reverse everything. Like you don't even care because it's just the emotional stakes that are in
Yes.
this part is so big. And you know, it's funny because in our acting program, like they always talk about raising the emotional stakes, but in these superhero movies, like I often sit back and you know, yes, as an actor, I probably could always find a way to raise the stakes. But in these movies, I often sit back and go, I don't know how I don't know how you can make the emotional stakes any higher than they already are. But it's really good to see. And then Doctor Strange casts a spell, and yes, you can see the different villains in the thing there. But I don't know, man. I mean, it's nice to see that. Maybe that's a tease for something else. But yeah, we saw Craven, Scorpion,
Rhino
and
was there.
yeah, Rhino was there. I mean, you could argue all sorts of stuff what you saw in there. I need to really dissect that scene and like watch it carefully. But yeah, the spell is often debated now because the whole point of the spell was like to forget anyone knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. And a fun side note, I should say, when I was watching this film and all this stuff is going on, the movie's dark and everything, Anna crawled her way through the aisle. Okay, the second time I saw it, she crawled her way through the aisle underneath everybody and then came up to me at some random point in the film and just grabbed me, pulled me to her face and just yelled at me like, "This is the best movie ever. Oh my God, it's the best movie ever." And she went back to her seat. But she was just absolutely loving it. Anyway,
that's classic Anna. She did that during Eternals too. She was having a great time during Eternals. Anna, you remember that? I know you do.
Yeah. So it was epic, man. So so the spell is like everyone forgets that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So what's going to happen is Spider-Man was still there for all the events. He helped the Avengers. He, you know, was with the Guardians, all that stuff. They just don't know that he's Peter Parker. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And Marvel has confirmed that there will be more details in future stories about how that spell worked. Cool. So we will see more of that as well. But yeah, an epic storytelling of Spider-Man indeed. And it was a wonderful, wonderful ride. And then we get to him wearing the classic Spider-Man suit, which was really cool.
It's about time. And like that ending had it did something that you brought up earlier, talking about how the way Tom Holland plays Peter, you know, it's the emotional drive of it all. Like you can just kind of feel it stronger than we have with Spider-Man before. And I think that him being so young plays the factor a lot too, especially the image of him at the end where he's at the grave of Aunt May. And I remember kind of getting hit with the feels there where he's visiting, usually like scenes where people are just visiting a grave. It's not that interesting. It's usually just them saying like, "I'll avenge you," right? It's not as interesting as the death itself. But he's standing there visiting her grave, and it's winter, it's Christmas time, and he's got like a coat on and a hat. And I remember just kind of feeling like, you know, that poor kid, like he's still a kid. He lost his parents, he lost his uncle, he lost his aunt. And I guess it's because of how young he is that I just had this feeling of like, I hope he's going to be okay. Like, is he warm enough? It looks like it's cold outside. Like I started getting really emotionally invested in just Peter and just hoping he was all right. Even though I know he's Spider-Man, he can take care of himself. That's still a kid. Like that's still a teenager. And I was just overcome with this surge of like sympathy and like, oh, like get somewhere warm, buddy. Go have something to eat. Like it, you know. So I don't think I could have gotten that with Toby or with Andrew. No disrespect to them, but it's just they're just older dudes, and it's harder to kind of get that parental protectiveness going when the guys are older than you. So I feel like they have been in this whole trilogy playing the strength, playing the card that the other Spider-Men didn't quite have, which is this is a boy. This is a young man. I'm not a boy. I'm not a girl. I'm a boy. I mean, I'm a man. They have played that strength wonderfully. And this final scene of him swinging off into the, I was going to say sunset, but it's clearly nighttime, swinging off into the Rockefeller Christmas Plaza with that suit. My God, Ryan, why? I just need 3 movies with this suit now. That's what I need. This whole trilogy better have just been an origin story of how he gets that suit. That's how much I love it.
I actually hope your next trilogy is pure Kingpin as the main arcing villain.
Yes.
Personally, I would love to see a Sins of the Father story where he just like recruits all these weird offhand villains to try and stop Spider-Man. I think that would be perfect. Because nobody messes with Mr. Spider-Man's neighborhood. So I think that would be fun. But who knows what's next for him? Honestly, Tom Holland, man, take your break. Take your vacation, buddy. You deserve it.
Mhm.
Enjoy your Uncharted press tour and all that fun stuff. But take your break from Marvel. Give us some time. Like Endgame. I kind of, though I want to see Spider-Man as soon as possible, I want it done right, and I want it done at the right time. So I will gladly wait. I got many things to hold me over. I got Doctor Strange next. I got Moon Knight. I got Moon Knight next, then Doctor Strange, and then oh man, just so much going on. We got She-Hulk coming out too. I don't even know when that's coming yet.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We won't see anything She-Hulk related till after Moonlight launches for sure.
No.
So I don't know when the big drop will be. Although, quick prediction on that one. We may get a She-Hulk trailer on International Women's Day.
Ooh, when's that? May something?
March 8th.
March 8th. Okay, that's soon. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would be perfect. It'd be a good birthday gift for me from Marvel.
Yes, it will.
3 days before my birthday. That would be nice. But yeah, I mean, but my point is, like Endgame, I don't need to see a Spider-Man movie for a little while. Just a little bit. Give me some time. Give me some time to process and ruminate with what I just saw, because it was epic. And everyone's like, I hope this movie gets an Oscar win and all this stuff like that. Personally, I don't care. I'm with Feige on this. If it happens, great. Doesn't, that's okay too. Because
hey, it won a Fanny. That's what's important. Okay, it won 2 Fannies, in fact. So
that's the only award that matters, is the Fanny Awards, to be honest. But to be fair, in terms of the Oscars, is that movie's a personal achievement to fans,
yes.
and fans will only appreciate the personal achievement that it has. And box office numbers don't lie. I mean, I'm pretty sure it surpassed Avatar at this point. So that
domestically, I think domestically it passed Avatar. I think right now it's sitting at number 5 all time worldwide.
Number 5 all time, man.
5 or 6.
But like that level of storytelling is a personal achievement as a comic book fan, and I can't wait to see other movies find that formula and just play with it. Now, the interesting thing too that I did want to talk about as we are wrapping things up is that there is now all these talks of these different MCUs that all play into the same story arc, but they're all different. Let me just quickly pull it up here. But there's now the Cosmic MCU, there's the Street MCU, there's like the Supernatural MCU. It's all there now. So we're seeing all these different MCUs now. They're all going to be all doing their own thing. That being said, if that's true, which MCU are you most excited about?
Oh boy, what a great question, man. Is this just sort of, this isn't something that like Feige or Disney have stated, right? This is just something fans are saying, like, now it's
fans
so big.
This is definitely, so yeah, there's MCU Cosmic, MCU Avengers, MCU Multiverse, MCU Young Avengers, MCU Supernatural, MCU Street, and MCU Spider-Man.
Holy shit, that's a lot. Okay, what am I looking at? Okay. So Cosmic is Guardians of the Galaxy. That makes sense. Honestly, I mean, none of them don't get me excited, right?
I know it's a win. It's a win on all fronts.
Really. It's a win on all fronts. None of them are going to make me go, oh, that one. I guess my answer, from my gut answer, is the one that gives us the most Kingpin. So it'll probably be MCU Street or Spider-Man. Hopefully Spider-Man. But like, I'm all in for everything right now. There is even like a character like Blade, who I never cared about. I'm all in for whatever they do with Blade because I love Mahershala Ali and I just love this world. So like, I'm never going to be like, nope, skip, won't watch. What about you?
I'm excited for MCU Supernatural for sure. Getting me my Moon Knight. I'm pretty excited about that. And you know, before anyone goes like, oh man, he must be such a crazy big fan of Moon Knight. I'm a recent fan of Moon Knight. Moon Knight has earned his place in my fandom heart. Because he did it through the games. It was odd to find him kind of reoccurring in a lot of games when I've rarely ever heard of him. And then I started reading the comics, and then it all just unfolded from there. And one episode, he actually had one really good episode in Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, where you got like probably one of the best versions of Moon Knight, and it's really fun to watch. So yeah, I'm excited for MCU Supernatural. I hope they expand that a lot more because we get Ghost Rider, we get Blade, we could get a whole plethora of other characters that could tie in with Doctor Strange as well, which would be really cool to see. But I also hope to see Cloak and Dagger return. I want Cloak and Dagger to return as well, right? So I mean, sky's the limit. One thing I do hope I see with Spider-Man is I want to see him appear in other projects. I mean, we saw him appear in Avengers a few times, but he hasn't appeared in anything else. So I want to kind of see him in other things, in that sense.
There's whispers, I don't know how accurate they are, but there's whispers that we will see a Spider-Man in Morbius.
You know, that's not what I mean, though. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to see him in like Hawkeye with Kate Bishop.
Yeah, totally. You
know,
he's gonna work with Yelena. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, for sure. Like that kind of but that kind of stuff. I want to see that. Give me more.
Just like Britney Spears. Give me more. We're just gonna go outside Feige's house and play that on a boombox.
I mean, I think the MCU Street is definitely going to be probably the most interesting one, to be honest with you, because we're now getting Daredevil, Kingpin, and I think the XMen would probably play a factor in the Street one as well, because you know, you get the Friends of Humanity in there, and then you mix all that up together.
I think the pocket is so big, though, that could be its own thing, like MCU Mutants. Like, it's such a big pocket.
I know, but I feel like the Street version's better because, like, you can mix and match them with other things. Anyway, but yeah, it's man, Jonathan, thank you for giving us this conversation. It was really fun. A lot of cool revelations happened from it for sure. So it was really fun to do. But I hope we made you proud with this conversation.
I think so. I haven't seen any notifications yet that Jonathan Davis has unsubscribed, so I think we're doing okay for ourselves. This was a movie that was definitely worth revisiting, so I'm glad that we got the chance to do so, even though it's been so long ago now, and now movie theaters are finally getting back into the swing of things, just in time for Batman, which is great, because the Riddler and me, we got some catching up to do. Ryan, where can people find you, and why is your hair always so nice? You can answer those in any order you wish.
Just hope for the best with with this whole look. And you can find me over on Twitter, and you can find me on twitch.tv/Xbox Canada. If you happen to watch this video when it goes live, which I assume is going to be now, if you watch this video between now and tomorrow, which is Friday, from 12 to 2 Eastern Standard Time, I'll be giving away 2 copies of Elden Ring. So if you want a copy of Elden Ring, that is be there from 12 to 2, And I'll do one better on this channel. I'll tell you when I'll be giving away those copies. I'll be giving them on the top of the hour. So I'll be giving away one copy at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We're giving away a second copy at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you tune in and join me for that, because that game apparently has broken a lot of records in terms of scores and all that wonderful greatness. So I'm excited to play it and give away it.
Can you text me a link to that stream?
Yes, I'll say it one more time. It's twitch.tv/Xbox Canada.
I want to win this game because I'm too poor to buy it for $100. Twitch.tv/Xbox Canada. I will be there.
12 to 2 Eastern Standard Time.
Alrighty. And you may or may not also be divulging secrets about your hair on that stream. You'll just have to tune in and see. I was playing this game last week with my students. It's an acting game where it's like one kid has a secret character that I give them, and the other person in the scene has to guess what their character is. Mm-hmm. So this girl, the secret character I gave her was, I told her, you're me. You're playing me, right? So the other girl's asking her questions to try to figure out, and like who she's playing. And she's having a hard time. So she gets frustrated and she's like, just describe one physical attribute. And the kid says, I'm balding.
I don't know if you'd ever actually admit that out loud. Was it that exercise where like they're in an interrogation room and you ask questions to find out who they are?
No, it was like a therapist, and the patient has the secret character, and the therapist is trying to get to the bottom of it.
Okay. We did that. We did a similar exercise at the interrogation, and you were Seabiscuit. You were the movie Seabiscuit.
I forgot all about that. Oh my god.
Oh man. And I think no, it's kind of reverse. It's where we know the film, but we have to get the person to guess the film. And we had Seabiscuit, you and I were playing the cops, and we kept messing up between who was the good cop and the bad cop.
Who were we interviewing?
I can't remember who it was, but I'll never forget the joke, because we were almost at wit's end, and I was talking about betting on horses or something, and we were all having that moment of exhaustion. You're like, Biscuit.
Oh my god, that totally slipped. Was this Alan Gutman's class? Is this improv class?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
What a fun game! That I totally forgot all about that. Thank you for reminding me.
It was so priceless. Oh my god, you just tossed it out like it was nothing. You're just like, Biscuit.
That is, I got to do that with them. The thing is, with my kids, they don't know a lot of movies just because they're so young. Like they don't watch a lot of stuff. So I'll see if I can get them to do that. But that sounds like a really fun game. But in the meantime, you can find me on Instagram at Andrew _. Is there an underscore on Instagram? I don't know. Just Andrew Fantasia. I don't understand how phones work. Just write my name in Instagram. I don't care at this point. And on Twitter and on YouTube here on the Rebels Come Podcast Network and on my own channel, which is just called Andrew Fantasia. And then you can find me and Ryan in our homes watching Moon Knight very shortly, because that's coming up. And as you know, we will cover it here episode by episode, like we always do, because that's how we roll. So thanks once again, everybody, for listening. If one of you listeners is one of the telemarketers who called me a exact total of 9 times this morning, please leave me be. But otherwise, you're welcome. Anybody else is welcome to come talk to me and Ryan anytime. Ryan, have a wonderful evening. And please, tomorrow, have a marvelous day.